I do think if once you sell your integrity, like you kind of don't have anything left. And to your point that you made earlier, like, why would you throw away 5 years worth of content creation and building up relationships with your audience for, a chat? And I've seen it with other content creators in different beauty spaces, skincare spaces, stuff that have gone down that route, and it's not worth it. I personally, for me, I don't think it's worth it. I think you've got to stick to you, or be authentic, and stick to yourself.
Hello, and welcome back to Unpacking Beauty. This is the podcast that explores questions about the science, marketing, and trends in the beauty space. My name is Kelly Driscoll. I am the creator and host, and I'm also a skincare enthusiast on YouTube and Instagram. So I've been making content around skincare for about 5.5 years. I cannot believe it's been that long. And it really is something that was a journey that I had to take. Not only the things that you have to learn, like all of the camera and the gear and like all the types of content that work and don't work on any given platform. I definitely had to go on a journey with that. But also there was like a personal journey involved in this too. And there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes of being just a content creator, but definitely in the skinfluencer space, there is a lot that goes on that is never seen by the audience or by the community. And this has always been something that I have wanted to shed light on. As I said, it's been a real journey and growing experience for me. So one of my goals when I started developing Unpacking Beauty was always to have an intimate skinfluencer chat where, you could get different perspectives from maybe some of your favorite skinfluencers about what goes on behind the scenes of their channel. What are things that they want you to know? How do they make money? How do they work with brands? How do they keep their integrity while working in this industry? And what keeps them going? And that conversation is happening today. I am so excited to welcome MadAboutSkin, Robert Stead, to the podcast. Rob has been on YouTube for quite a few years now in the skinfluencer space, and his channel has really blown up. We have been like fans from afar of each other. We both watch each other's channel. We've been in contact a little bit, but we've always wanted to connect, and this is the perfect conversation for it. In this conversation, we both go deep about what goes on behind the scenes of our channel, how we run our business, how we make our money. We talk about working with brands. We talk about all the shady stuff that happens in the industry that we've had to sidestep. And I hope you find this conversation enlightening, juicy, informative, and just good plain fun. So without further ado, here's the conversation. MadAboutSkin, welcome to the Unpacking Beauty podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you doing, Rob?
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's very exciting. This is my first podcast, so very excited to be doing it with you. And thank you very much for having me. All good this end.
Awesome. Yeah, you just told me that you did daylight savings. And so we had like a little ooh, what time is it right now in each other's time zones? We're going to go through it this weekend. I'm not looking forward to it because it always throws me off when the time changes and the clocks don't.
This is the good one, though, because we get an extra hour in bed.
True.
The other one, less fun.
Very
this is the good one.
So I'm really excited to have you today because we're going to be talking all about really what goes on behind the scenes of being a skincare content creator or a skinfluencer. Both you and I are in the skincare enthusiast space, have been making videos on YouTube for quite a while now. And I've always wanted to kind of pull the curtain back and really show, viewers and listeners what actually goes on. This is a business. How does that happen? How do you work with brands? How do you make money? What does your day-to-day look like? Because it is very different than I think a lot of people think. I used to follow a lot of makeup YouTubers way back in the day, and the way I imagine their life versus like me kind of going down a similar path, it's so different, right? So I'm really excited to jump into this conversation. I also have some listener questions as well for both of us to answer.
Oh, fab.
Yeah. So let's just start off with, if somebody's just stumbling onto this fresh, let's just introduce, yourself, how you got started, like what niche you work in, and like maybe some of your favorite topics to cover.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So for those of you that want to find me, the handle's MadAboutSkin on all the socials. And I stumbled into this at the start of the pandemic. So going back, I think 3 years now, where, like a lot of people, a lot of time, And I'd been thinking of doing something like this for the past probably like 10 years before then. I just never had the time to do it. And then all of a sudden, had some spare time. We're all in our house. I was like, let's actually give it a go. And I was pretty sure it was going to be a failure, but I felt like if you don't try, you don't know. So I started, and you know what? I didn't tell anybody from like at all for the first 6 months, because it's like, until I know that I'm going to keep doing this, I don't want all the questions, people asking how it's going and things. Yeah. And it just kind of, it was a bit of a slow burn at the start, as I'm sure you'll appreciate it. Kind of, and then it just picked up steam, and all of a sudden you find yourself here. And this is the funny thing about it. It happens like over such a slow pace of that growth, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a different place, and it was quite exciting. But it's been lots of like ups and downs along the way, but it's been quite an exciting journey.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I have kind of a somewhat similar story of getting into YouTube. I actually started YouTube 10 years ago. I did it for like a year and like nothing happened. So I gave up. I was like, no, this is not for me. This is too much work. But then I just kind of still had it in my heart. Like you said, it was something I wanted to do for a really long time. But time, I was given the gift of time because I was unemployed. I had lost my job. And so I was like, you know what? Nothing is holding me back now, right? I'm going to get into and really kind of like commit to it, but without the pressure of the expectations. And I think once I let go of the expectations and just allowed myself to just make videos, try to learn from each video, try to get better, try to do, little by little, it slowly but surely started to pick up and became what it is, today. So yeah, I think time is a precious gift.
For sure. And I think, it's such a weird way, because the skincare community is quite small on YouTube versus some of the other, niches. Yeah. Skincare was quite small. So the people that I were watching before I started my channel and other people that I'm talking to today, like your channel was one that I watched before I started my own channel. And I've connected with some other content creators that had their channels before mine. And it's kind of weird to be in like a million miles apart, but still it's quite a close little community. And I know a lot of my followers watch your content and vice versa. And so it's kind of, it's a strange little bubble, but a really nice one.
So let's talk about the process of making content, because that's really, I think, something that people are really interested in, is like, what's the start to finish between, what topics or products that you're going to cover? How do you, research that? Are you scripted? Are you totally off the cuff? How do you film? How do you edit? Like, what's your process from start to finish when, creating a video?
I guess mine, it might be different for everyone else, but my thing is don't overthink it, because I've gone through, I think one of the most amazing things about YouTube is when a video picks up, it goes viral and you get, the attention from that video. One of the most disheartening things is you spend hours doing a video and it just doesn't perform. In my experience, the videos that you spend the most time on do the least well. I don't know why that's the case, but I think it's because we overthink it. It ends up almost boring because you've overthought it, overscripted it. And so in the start, I was very much like, had my script. I used to pause all the time to read my notes and do all of that. And I look back, and I'm someone that keeps all of my content online. So you can look back at the 3 years videos and you look back to the original ones. It was very disjointed. It was very scripted. It didn't have that flow. And I think that's the reason they didn't do as well as maybe the videos that I do now. So I would think, don't overthink it, but equally, there kind of has to be some thought. You can't just sit down and, oh, here we are, let's just see what we can film. I think it's finding that balance between overscripted, but also have a bit of preparedness for it as well. That's how I approach it, which I don't know, is the same for you? Do you take the same approach?
Half and half, I think. For me, I feel like I release so much all the time that it's like having to find that right mix between what is like a really in-depth topic, like deep dive, which means a lot of research for me. And I do bullet points for myself to keep myself on track. I love to talk. That's why my videos are so long. Why I have a podcast. But I do try to keep myself on track with like the main points that I want to hit about things. But at the same time, when you're juggling like 4 videos and then all the shorts and stuff at the same time, you have to give yourself a break too. So I like to balance out the like heavily researched stuff that will take me a couple of hours to prep with some more like off the cuff type of stuff, like maybe just show you what my routine is, or just like round up like some products that I absolutely love in a certain category, like a top 5 or something, just to keep it manageable truly for myself. And the funny thing is you exactly nailed it on the head. If you overthink it, if you're like really, really invested and you spend a lot of time and every little thing it's never the one that hits. It's always the one where you're like, I just don't really know what to film. So I just want to talk about some toners today. And like everybody's like, this is the video. This is it.
Yeah. And I think it's funny, like when you talk about inspiration for videos as well, because obviously there is a finite number of, topics in skincare that you can cover. And sometimes you have those days where you're like, yeah, I just can't think of anything. I don't know what to talk about. Totally. I always like binge watch some of my favorite content creators because often they'll have videos that I think, you know what, that's a great idea. And I could put my own spin on that, do my own version of that. And sometimes like that is really a good source of kind of inspiration for those days when you're feeling a bit uninspired with stuff. I know that other content creators do the same because you'll see like, you'll do a video and you'll see someone replicates it with their own spin on it in a week's time. And actually, I think it's incredibly flattering for that. It's kind of nice to watch other people's takes on topics. So that's always my like top tip for being inspired if you're feeling a little uninspired.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I like to do too is follow the seasons. So I do a lot of seasonal content around, it starts to turn into fall, and then it's like how to shift your routine and products that might, suit that type of season, or some of the concerns that will pop up in that season. Like for me, it's allergy. So I'll do some content about really gentle stuff to help ease the allergy symptoms that might show on your face. Winter, heavy duty moisturizers, how to protect your skin. That's always like a cycle that I can go through every year and get, some new ideas, some fresh topics. I get really inspired by products too. And I get like I'm super into ingredients. So when I look at products, I'm like, why does this work the way it does? Then I might do like a research into certain ingredients and go, oh, maybe this is the one thing that makes this product so special. And then maybe I'll explore that deeper. There's always stuff to cover. I think it's really funny. My family, when I first started doing this, they're like, well, are you like, how do you keep thinking of ideas? You're like, you're probably going to run out of ideas, right? And it's like, well, we're going into, I'm almost on year 6 and I haven't run out of any ideas yet. So guess not.
I love how different our families are. You also like concern over content and ideas. When I told my family I was doing this, first thing was like, is there any free swag? Can we have any free products? I was like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Also a good question to ask, I guess.
Definitely. Now, like I said, I did tap into some listener questions. And so this is actually right on topic here. Succulent Skin on Instagram asked, do you ever have to tell brands to stop sending you PR?
Yes. Sometimes I think I try to be nice because equally, like, I don't know, I have this sort of feeling that I don't want to be rude to anyone. And I'm always grateful for anything that would be sent. It's so generous of a brand to reach out and do it. But equally, I think if you're not going to use it, you kind of have to think, it's just creating waste. I don't want to create waste. So I go through a process of if I end up with a lot of something for a brand that I know I'm not going to use or it's not going to work for me, I think, can I gift it away? Can I give it to friends and family? I'll go through that process. And then after that, when I still think I've still got product, then I would say to them, like, maybe not. But equally, it's quite hard saying no because you don't want to come across as rude. So it's finding that balance. But what I've noticed, I don't know if you've found the same thing, but in the last year, brands often reach out proactively before they send, rather than just sending something through. They'll say, would you like to try our new X line, or what skin concerns do you have? And we'll match some products to that. So I feel that this year in particular, brands have been a bit more conscious of what they're sending and making sure it matches to you as a content creator and to an individual. So that was more of an issue of saying no last year than it was this year. I think it's a little bit easier. And that's good because ultimately we want to cut waste, don't we? So that definitely works.
Yeah, for sure. I think I haven't quite noticed that, but I would say that I really do appreciate when brands do ask if you're interested, or when they let you pick out your own stuff too, instead of just sending you our latest X, Y, and Z or our whole line of blah, blah, blah. It's so great and it's generous. And there's certain brands where that can be really helpful because they're popular. People are asking about them. But at the same time, it's like, there's no way I could possibly ever use this myself. And I'm very proactive about trying to use stuff on my body, trying to find things in interesting ways, giving away to friends, giving away to family, doing like buy nothing groups, just trying to get it out into somebody else's hands who's going to appreciate it maybe more than I, or, just use it. But it is hard to say no sometimes. And then you're like, well, is this like going to be the product that everybody's freaking out about? And then I said no to it or something. So it can be hard. But it is as generous and wonderful, and how grateful I am, because it saves me the money that I would have to spend, right, to go and buy these products. It is overwhelming. I personally feel it's like kind of overwhelming to be getting all this new stuff all the time. But I'm grateful. Like it's like icky to be like, it's so overwhelming, but
yeah. I also think it depends how a brand follows up with it, because I have no issue with the brands like, did you get stuff? What do you think? Because I think half of the benefit of any PR stuff is getting genuine feedback and feeding back, even if you don't feature it on your channel, feeding back. I always like to do that as a courtesy. I think a lot of brands will be like, did you get stuff? Do you have any feedback? And I think that's great. It's those brands that send you something, zero obligation, they just send it and they're like, when's it going to be featured? When are you talking about it? You're like, well, that pressure I don't do well with, because I'm like, oh, well, I'd rather not have had something like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's always the difficult one, I think.
Yeah, I definitely don't take anything that has any type of requirements. As you mentioned, strings. I actually don't accept anything. I did when I was first beginning, but I'm at a point now where I'm not going to work for free, skincare. That doesn't, pay my grocery bill. That doesn't pay my mortgage, right? But I just think that like we're at an era too where that's just not acceptable behavior to like be like, in exchange we will ask you to post and blah blah blah. I think as you get further along too, you value not only yourself, but it's like you value your audience. Like you don't want to bombard them with all of this like, well, it's not sponsored, but it's kind of, the ties there are really strange. And I just like to keep that out of the equation. So if you can't, if you can't gift it to me with no strings, I can try it and decide what I want to do or not with it. If that's not on the table, then I have no problem walking away from that. That's just not an alignment for me right now.
Same, absolutely. And I think that, it helps you manage the whole sponsored versus unsponsored argument of, is something gifted with a string attached sponsored? My view, yes. In some other people's view, no. It's just easier to stay well clear of it, and then there's no gray area, is there?
So let's talk about making money. How do you support yourself while you make free content? Because, everything that we're putting out onto all social, onto all YouTube, it's free for anyone to access. So I think probably the number one question, that I get asked whenever I tell somebody like in real life, I'm on YouTube. They're like, how do you make money?
I'd say I was quite determined to make this work, because actually the number one comment I got whenever I told anybody like create content online, people were like, well, that's not a real job, or when are you going to get a real job, or that won't last for long. And you hear all of this stuff, so it kind of made me determined to say, actually, this can be a real job. And I think it's different for every person, and everyone will approach it from a different way. I mean, I know there's lots of channels that have a Patreon, like a paid subscriber element to go alongside their channel, which is a great way of bringing in revenue. I don't personally have one, but I know quite a few people that do. I know people do sponsored content, and there's lots of different ways. For me, I make from the ad revenue from YouTube, make more than enough to keep going with what I do, pay the bills, be happy. I do also, I do have a job on the side that I do. It's more contracting now, but at the time I was able to do more work to kind of subsidize this and then sort of tail that off as things grew on YouTube. So I was quite fortunate to be in a position where as one thing grew, I could reduce the amount of hours on another, and that worked. I do run my own business linked to skincare as well. So it all comes together to work fine. I would just say if I was giving advice to someone starting a YouTube channel, I would just say diversify your income sources, because there's a lot of up and down. Like at the end, you have a 9 to 5 and you cash that check at the end of the month, and it's usually the same amount every single month. It works. In November and December, where advertisers are paying through the roof to get their products in front of your videos, you could be making $10,000-$15,000 a month if you're a big content creator. That could drop in January to $2,000, and you're like, that's a huge difference. So I would start to think, before I scale back my 9 to 5, I really thought, like, what is my worst month? I'd take the worst month. Can I survive on my worst month? And then everything else is kind of bonus after that. But I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can make, through affiliate links is a great way. If you recommend a product, someone chooses to buy it through a link, then there's commission attached to that. There's ad revenue. You can be creative, I think, with how I think what surprised me is I know a couple of other content creators, and we had a little bit of a candid chat around like income and things like that. And I know it's tacky to talk about money, but we had that little chat. And I think what amazes me is the difference. So you'll see some reports online. One of the things I read originally is for every million views you get on a video, equates to $10,000 in ad revenue. And that stuck in my mind. I was like, wow, this is like, I can tell you now, it ain't nowhere near that. As you know, like it's nowhere near.
Nope. I was like, that doesn't sound right.
But I know for some like finance channels where, people will pay big money to get in front of those channels, that probably is right. They probably are getting $10,000 per million views. So I think it's so wild for everyone else. Like, do your own thing, stay in your own lane. I say just don't fixate on what other people might be doing. And I think that's something I did early on, which was chase the views. Oh, so-and-so is getting more views than I am, or so-and-so is growing at this rate. It's not healthy to compare yourself to others. And I think when I stepped back from that, I thought, okay, what do I want to do? Where's my growth strategy? It felt a lot better and actually worked a lot better. I grew a lot faster when I stopped worrying about what other people were doing. So I would say diversify your income streams and make sure you're not just relying on ad revenue, which fluctuates massively. Have that diversity. And I think that's the biggest tip I could give to anyone. Make sure you've got lots of different sources.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. Skincare Lover 1988 and Independence Framework both asked about how do you run, how do you run the business? And I think you hit that exactly. You need to think about it like a business. I 100% agree. Diversified income streams for me. Yeah, definitely. Ad revenue from views on videos. I've been on YouTube for 5.5 years. So not every video that I've ever released is still getting views, but a lot of them are. So I have a back catalog of stuff that is gaining views, that's getting the ad views, that's helping to generate monthly income, even videos from 2018. So that's amazing, right? And then of course, affiliate links. So if you recommend a product or something, it doesn't have to be in the skincare niche, but if there's a product that you talk about, find a way to get an affiliate link into the description box. You can lead people to it and you get basically a commission. It's really small. But again, like I think for me, it's the many years of content that's working for me. So even if maybe I didn't release the best videos this past month, I'm still getting, some revenue from the older work that I've done, which I think is the beauty of YouTube. Sponsorships are something that I always treat as I call extra. I don't rely on them for income to make my year or my month or whatever work. But when they do come along and it's in alignment and I can accept that, that is usually a much bigger payout than a monthly ad revenue or something. And that is something that actually can help me float through the harder months. I think one thing that people don't really understand about content creation is we are at the mercy of the economy just as much as everybody else is. While we maybe won't, lose our job from, people cutting down on staff or something, but people do spend less money. People are clicking less affiliate links. So that is definitely something I've noticed in the past year as the economy has been very volatile. I've noticed that shopping habits have definitely taken a downturn, especially versus the pandemic years where people were shopping quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've noticed that difference. I also, YouTube doesn't always pay out the same rate per ad view. That's always constantly changing too. So there may be some months where you make more, some months where you make less, but you might still be averaging the same amount of views. Again, that is tied into the economy and what advertisers are willing to pay to get onto YouTube, and then your cut of that from views. So it's something that you actually do, like I said earlier, think about it as a business, take into account all the factors that would affect any other small business out there. And I think that you learn as you grow, because I didn't approach this necessarily from that mindset immediately. I was just like, how can I make money? But as the years have gone on, I've learned how to manage a small business essentially. And that's been a journey for sure.
Yeah. Oh, it is. And I would say that a lot of people, I think there is still that false narrative that content creator, or if you want to call the industry, isn't a proper job. And therefore, like, and I get it for a lot of people. Like, I absolutely adore what I do. And I am in such a privileged position to be able to say I love the job that I do. And I know there's lots of people that aren't in that position. And I'm mindful of that. But there's still a lot of work goes into it. So I'd say to people, like, if you're wondering how it works, it's kind of no different to a self-employed plumber, electrician, or something like that. Someone that goes out, does job. Some months will be better than others. You know, that's kind of, it's like any other self-employed work. You've got to manage things really difficult. It's got its benefits, like you say, like the benefit of still earning, you know, commission on a video that might be 4 years old, and even if you don't do a video one day and you're laying in bed all day, some ad revenue will roll in or some commission will roll in, and you think this is great. Yeah. But the reverse is, if you're sick and you have a week off, no one's paying you for that. So that's right. It's got its swings and roundabouts. Like, it's benefits and drawbacks for sure.
So one thing that I definitely wanted to talk about, which I know everybody wants to know about, is how do you work with brands? You know, how do you find the opportunities? What does the back end of a sponsorship look like? And if there's any tea that you want to spill, feel free. We don't do names here. We need to protect ourselves too. But yeah, definitely, I would love to hear about your experience working with brands and how you go about that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So on my channel, I personally don't do sponsorships. And I think that's not a case of I'm against them. And I think there's this real negativity in some elements of the community saying, if you do sponsorships, you're a fraud. Absolutely not. As long as you're doing ones that are aligned to you. And, you know, I know from your channel, if I look and see that a video has a sponsored element to it, it's always about a brand that you've already talked about 1,000,001 times before. And so why wouldn't you take the sponsorship if you're already invested in that? But there's this notion that it's a bad thing. And I think some of that is driven by other content creators, shall remain nameless, that do any or brand. You think, I've never seen that product or brand on your channel before, and I'll never see it again. That to me is cash grabby, and that's what I think turns a lot of people off. And there was a lot of that happening when I started on YouTube. And so I decided I'm not going to do sponsorships. I don't want to be part of that. I'm not going to do sponsorships. And that's followed through. And I think now I'm in a really difficult position where a lot of the brands that I work with in the sense of I recommend all the time and I absolutely love, I've approached and said, could we do a sponsored content? And I feel like I have to say no, because I've said to everyone, don't do sponsored, don't do this. But equally, it could be a perfectly authentic thing, because I've already mentioned that. So I find myself in that, and I think now is the point at which I'm thinking, well, there is no harm in doing something that would, if it's authentic, and I think that's the stage I'm at now. But what's interesting with brands is doing it that way is they approach you, which means I think I get fewer sponsorship opportunities because I'm waiting for someone to contact me. But I think generally the quality's there because they're brands that you've already got a relationship with it, albeit just, you know, products and talking about things. So, I'm open to doing it in the future, potentially, if the right brand comes along. But what I find really interesting with brands and the way they approach is, I'll get a lot of proactive just approaches and saying, and some brands, to mention their names, can be really quite aggressive in their pitch. And you're like, really, is that how you would treat someone? So it's like, we need to know your rates for this, and this, and you will deliver this. This is your introduction email. I'm like, seriously, like a full contract, and it's just a hi. And I was thinking, no, that's not for me. One brand did that recently. It was like, and it's the fakeness, and maybe I'm just a bit cynical, but it's the fakeness of the email. So one brand that should remain nameless emailed me about last week and was like, hey, Rib. Like Rob, kind of similar, but never mind. Starting off well. I'm like, well, that's the time I was like, we really love your content and think it's absolutely amazing. We'd love to work with you. We've got this new product coming out and we think it'd be a great fit. All this praise. And I'm thinking, if you'd spent like 2 minutes watching my channel, you'll know that you're one of my least favorite brands. And I actually said I didn't particularly like a product about 2 weeks ago. I think so. Clearly, you're just putting it out there, hoping that someone will take a bite or whatever. But yeah, that was an example of, I think, it done badly. I think organically it feels better. And there are some really great brands out there that I think do sponsorships well. A Korean skincare brand. I know you're into your Korean skincare. So a Korean skincare brand said, could we send you some product for a new line? I was like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Tried it, absolutely love it, and did a video off the back of that saying, actually, I think this is a wonderful line. And they then came and said, oh, could we do some sponsored content down the line? And I was like, actually, that's quite an organic way of that happening. They know the product's good. That's my own opinions. Nothing's paid, and then it follows on from there. So I think that's quite a nice way to approach it. But I'd be interested to know, because I know you do what I consider to be very authentic sponsored content. So how do you go about it? If people like me, new to the sponsorship world, how do you go about it?
Well, it's for me. Yeah, I struggle with the same thing that you talk about too. It's just like it is received so poorly that I try to be extremely careful about who I'm working with. Just because, like, for me, I don't want to. I'm not going to work with a brand that, like, I've never talked about before, or that I don't have an experience with, or maybe I don't believe in their product just for money. I figured that out fairly quickly, that I didn't want to just do something like, and the one thing that I always say is, like, am I going to risk my community that I've built for years and years for a one-day payout? Like, absolutely not. I value my viewers so much more than, a paycheck, right? And it's like a one-time thing. I'm not going to risk years and years of work for that. So that's kind of where I always approach my sponsorships from. I did used to wait for stuff to come in to me, and then I would decide if I wanted to do it or not. I believe that in the early days, I started to try to pitch myself. I had a media kit and everything, and I got a few sponsorships off of that, but it's really exhausting to cold call, basically. But I guess if you were starting out, that's what I would suggest doing, is creating what's called a one-sheeter. Put like your picture on there, all of your handles, and some of your stats. So things that people really like are like your reach, how many followers you have, maybe if you're on YouTube, like your average watch time or your average views for the last like 30 days, 90 days. Just put like some of your best stats up there. One sheet, don't make it super big, and you can just create that as like a PDF, and you can attach that in your email so people can. The one thing I've noticed is that, like, if you are going to do any type of business stuff, make it short, make it sweet, make it to the point. People don't have time. So don't write paragraphs about who you are or anything. Just introduce yourself, really nail that down in a sentence or two, and then get your one-sheeter. That's what would be my suggestion for people who are starting off in independent. Since 2020, I've personally been working with a talent agency. So I'm in a really great position where they just bring me stuff. And
that sounds great.
Yeah. And what I love about it too is that they have like the in-house legal that goes through every contract to make sure that those terms are fair. Because if you don't know the industry, if you're just starting off, it's really easy to sign a contract that you might be signing away more of yourself than you might have been anticipating. And what I mean by that is, what I've really learned by doing this is that you really do need to value every part of what you're doing. So sometimes a brand will ask you to make a video, and you're all for it and whatever, but then they also want to take that video and then chop it up and use it in paid advertisement that they push through on Instagram, or maybe they're making a YouTube ad. And so then they're using your likeness. That should be a separate fee from the content that you're creating. If somebody wants to use your image, they need to pay for that. That should not be wrapped up in just the one fee for your content, because they're using your identity, they're using your image to sell products, but they didn't pay you that fee. So that's one thing that I definitely missed in the beginning. And then that's something that I've learned throughout the years too, is that it doesn't matter how many followers you have. If they want to use that in an advertising way, if they want to put it on their Amazon page or whatever, you should be asking for a separate fee. That's a separate thing that it's called usage, and it's different. So that's one thing that I would put out there as a tip if anybody's like listening about that. But what's also super nice about having a middleman, if you will, is that they advocate for me. So I do struggle, as you mentioned earlier, it's hard to say no. When people approach you, it's like,
Yeah,
it can be hard to say no. And sometimes they offer you an amount of money that kind of turns your head. But when I have somebody who's advocating for me and doing all of the communication, it's so easy for me to say, hey, this doesn't feel in alignment. I'm not feeling comfortable. And they do all the work. I don't see the like
yeah,
weird communications, the pushiness. But I do have to say that there are quite a few. I say no more than I say yes, I feel like. I
yeah.
have also said yes to some things that before hitting publish on content, I have said no. I actually had one recently in the past couple of months where things just, it felt really good at the beginning, but then I did not like the way that things were progressing after the content had been made and it'll go through like a review process. I didn't like what the brand, I felt like they were pressuring me into saying certain
Yeah,
things that didn't align with my experience. I felt like they wanted me to basically read a script, which again doesn't align with, I'm
no,
going to tell you exactly what happened, and there might be some good things and bad things in there. Um, and so it sucked because I was invested time editing. I had a whole video.
yeah.
I had been saving all this space and I had to reshuffle things so many times to accommodate them. And I finally said no. And so, yeah, I sunk a lot of, like I said, time and money into it, but it didn't feel right. And so, that's just how I do it. It's different for everybody, but for me,
Yeah,
it
but I think you
has
were
to feel
right to
good.
do that. Yeah, you have to do what's right for you. And also, I think at the end of the day, brands are sponsoring because they want to sell product at the end of it. And
Right.
consumers aren't fools. If you are reading a script, anybody that's watched your channel will know that's not you, that's not
Exactly.
authentic. Why would they buy into something that's clearly just an ad, just an ad? And I
Exactly.
think that's where, yeah, I think that's where things get lost. And I think where this bad reputation from sponsorships and cash grabs, and
Hmm.
that's where that comes from. And I think knowing when to say like this isn't it. That's yeah. But I was actually going to say, for all the bad brands out there, and there are a lot of dodgy approaches and dodgy brands and way
Hmm.
and expectations. I think there are some good ones. I was just going to share a story that I had with a brand that was kind of a good guy in the world, and I said again, won't name names, but one brand that I'd worked with a lot in the sense of they sent me product. I love their products and have done for years. I've been working and sharing and fangirling over their products, and it's great. I did a video just saying how amazing one of their products was, and it was a shorts video actually. And they approached and said, "How much would it be for us to use that shorts video on our Instagram?" And I said, actually, at this point, I don't do sponsored content, so there is no cost. But honestly, we have a great relationship without the fee. Use it. Be my guest. Like, go for it.
Hmm.
Those are my honest thoughts and opinions. Use it. And that brand came back and said, well, we're not just going to take your content and use it. Do you have a charity that you work with? And we could make a donation in
Oh,
your name to cover that. And I was like, it's so kind. And I did. I gave them a charity and they made a donation. I was like, what? That's a good way of a brand not just assuming they can use your content, which many do, but actually
yeah.
doing that and saying, and that actually I think is such a nice way of looking at things. And so there are good brands out there that I think use it in the right way, do the right thing.
Yeah, definitely. 23ID asked on Instagram, has there ever been a lie in your paid reviews? As you've mentioned, you don't do them, but I really
Well,
wanted to address
so
this.
no, do you know what? It's fine. No, it's fine. I can do this, and I think you know what, that we might as well. Like, we might be. I might as well be totally honest and open. So I always like to think of myself as I'm not to be bought. I'm too stubborn to be bought. To be honest, if I decide I
Mhm.
don't like something, no amount of money in the world would make me say I like that product. I'm just too stubborn. But I will say, when I first started, there was a brand that reached out and said, can we give you some product in exchange for a review?" And that was my first ever piece of PR. Never received anything, and I was so flattered. Like, I thought, God, I must have had like 150, 200 subscribers. So I was like, this is like world changing. This is amazing. And that
Mhm.
flattery was like, I'm on it. And they sent me these products, and I tried the products, and I did a video about a day later or something, being like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I said how amazing these products were. I was like, you know what, you've used them for a day. You can't know how amazing they are because you've used them for a day. And they're okay, but they're not game changing. And I looked back around a month after. So that video had been up there. Fortunately, it only got like 90 views. So nobody was, in the grand scheme of things, no one was deceived. But I looked back at that video, I thought, no, this isn't it. And I think that is what made me decide not to do sponsorships, because I was like, you know what, I don't want to be in that position. And so I wouldn't say I lied, because the product wasn't terrible and I said it was amazing, but the product was average, and I was nicer about it than I would have otherwise been because of that flattery from that. And I think that was a learning case. And honestly, I'm quite open about this, because some people are like, oh, it's terrible. Well, you know what, we all learn, don't we? We go through life and we learn. I'm just really grateful that that happened at the 150 subscriber mark, because then you learn that and take it through. So yeah, so I'm quite happy to say. So I wouldn't say no. I've never been paid to say I like something that I don't. But equally, we all slip up. We're human, aren't we? And I think flattery does kind of, it does get to you a little bit. And I'm glad that I learned that lesson early on, because it's quite a valuable one. So, but you have to answer now. I've answered, so you have to.
Yeah, I do. I do have a story I want to share. But I was going to say that definitely, if a brand doesn't allow me to say, if there's like, I'll do like a pros and cons. If there is a con that I want to share, and for some reason they say, we don't want you to say that, that's a big red flag for me. Yeah. Because I have to be able to say, if the packaging is not good, I have to be able to critique that. If there's something that they can improve, I have to bring that up. But I do think that there is an element where you get a little bit like you said, like a little too excited, a little too flattered, a little too validated, maybe that all you can kind of put on the, you see things through the rosy glasses a little bit more. But now we're all, so jaded about, no, I'm just kidding. We're such jaded content creators. Yeah. No, so here's my story. Okay. So this is a sponsorship that I was considering. I didn't do this. I did not accept the sponsorship. Well, actually, I should say the sponsor did not accept me because so they approached me, and they had like their whole little brief about what it was. It was a Korean brand. They had some example videos of like what was like their best, best examples of their sponsorships. But they had very specific language that they wanted used, which was, our brand is actually popular in Korea, unlike X brand. So they wanted a very specific, don't buy X popular brand, buy this popular sponsored brand. And so before ever getting any product in hand or anything like that, I was like, I'm totally interested in trying out the products I'm interested in moving forward with like a trial phase to try the products and see if it's in alignment. I would definitely be interested in this moving forward. However, that language, like, I can't say that. I won't say that. I will totally say that like this is a brand that is popular in Korea, but I'm not going to compare it to another. I'm not going to bash another brand in order to lift up. And I said it in a nicer way, but I was just like, I'm not on board with this very specific word by word phrasing. Let's cut out that last part. And then they rejected me because of that. And so this is the crazy thing though. This freaking brand got popular and went viral because of the people who did accept those terms, made it like really, really popular. And people still keep asking me about this brand almost every day, if not weekly. And I can't say shiz about it because I have such a bad taste in my mouth when I say, hey, that language is not in alignment. I don't think it's cool to bash one person, one brand to sell another. But yet it worked. It worked. Yeah. They're getting so many more sales. They're super duper popular. And it's not in good taste for me to be like, and then they rejected me and they won't let me do a sponsorship with them. And I've tried the products since that happened and they're fine. Kind of like with your story, it's like, they're good. They're good. I can't complain, but I don't know that they're amazing. And I don't know that, the hype to me is so false. It's totally manufactured. And I have a bad taste in my mouth. So it's not a lie or anything, but this is how these things actually start, I guess, to get to 3 IDs question about that. That's how it happens because, people will accept that. They don't think twice about that. It's like, fine, I'll say whatever you want to say. It's fine. The products are good. But this is how sometimes you can manufacture hype and virality with your products and make things super popular is because I think that's kind of insidious, I guess. So
Yeah, and I get it. And I think what's funny though, when you were saying about like you don't want to talk about them because it'll be that like, am I being a bit bitter because they were a bit rude and shady to me or whatever.
yeah.
Do you know, the opposite day happens like every time if I say to I didn't like a product or I didn't. One thing that shocks me about like the skincare community is how passionate people are about their skincare products. Like if you say this didn't work for me, I'm not a fan of this serum, then you'll have like people in the comments with like, you know nothing, this worked for me. I'm like, I'm sure it did. Like, great, it didn't work for me. And I only have one face. I can only talk about this face. And it didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that if you ever say anything about like, oh, I'm not a big fan of this brand for whatever reason, or maybe this isn't for the product for me, there's always a comment in every video that's like, someone's not on the PR list. Oh, someone didn't get that sponsorship. Like,
yeah.
okay. Like, but that is the common thing. There's always like, someone's not on the PR list. You're like, well, as if that's the sole reason that I would do it. Like, yeah, right. So there is definitely that. And I think it goes both ways. But I do think if once you sell your integrity, like, you kind of don't have anything left. And to your point that you made earlier, like, why would you throw away 5 years worth of content creation and building up relationships with your audience for, a check, which will only cash once, and then you kind of haven't got anything? And I think that's where, I've seen it with other content creators in different beauty space and skincare space and stuff that have gone down that route. And it's not worth it. I personally, for me, I don't think it's worth it. I think you've got to stick to you or be authentic and stick to yourself, I think, and know yourself.
There is one question that I really wanted to dive in with you because this is something that I'm always kind of like, I wish people knew how much work went into like what we do. And that, as we mentioned earlier too, like we're solo creators, like, like I definitely get a little bit of help here and there, but it's all on me. I'm doing it all, you're doing it all. We're managing this. So I would really love to talk about mental health. How do you keep going? What is your self-care practices? How do you deal with burnout?
It's really funny. I would have said before this, I came into this process like 4 years ago now, and there was lots of content creators online talking about like mental health, taking a break from mental health and things like that. And I was always quite not dismissive of it because everyone has their own process and their own, things that they're processing and going through. But I was always like, oh, how hard can it actually be? How can and I think that's the mindset that a lot of people have. And I think sometimes we need to, I think it goes both ways. So I think sometimes as content creators, we do need to be mindful of constantly selling the sob story about how hard it is when there are people working ridiculously hard jobs. Yeah. But equally to say just because you're having fun filming a video, your mental health doesn't count is equally as toxic. So I think you've got to balance it out. And I do think we went through online. I do think we went through content creators constantly crying in front of the camera and how hard it is and stuff like that. And I don't think that helped. But equally, I think it should be called out that, like any other job, it has its ups and downs. And I think one thing that always amazes me with content creators is the comments. And I think to myself, like, if people have, people come up to you in the street and say, oh, I watch your videos, or I really like your content. It's always such a positive experience. And people are always so lovely. And I'm like, oh, that's really lovely. In the comment section, they're the opposite. And I think sometimes that can be like the keyboard warrior. And I know that some people don't maybe think that we read the comments, or maybe it doesn't count because you're typing it, you're not saying it. And the comments do sometimes get to me. I'm aware I'm in a very, very fortunate place where I have a good support network. I love what I do. From a mental health standpoint, really strong, and it's all good. And I know that some of these things get to me. So if you don't have that network, you don't have that built-in resilience, or something else is going on in your life at that time, how must that impact other people? And I've got a really good story that I want to share in this part of it. So one person was, and this is just a good example where I think sometimes, particularly with the comments, people don't think before they post. And someone said something, it was on a video, and someone was like, just said something like, I don't like you. I don't like your videos. I'm not sure. It was something around like, I don't know why you're talking about this because your skin isn't that great. # just saying. I was like, so I just messaged back. And normally I would just delete and be like, oh, whatever. I tend not to delete comments unless they're hateful or just unnecessary. And that's the sort of comment I would delete. But I was like, you know what? no, let's just, so I just messaged back and it was just said something like, hi, thanks for your feedback, not particularly constructive. Just to let you know, this doesn't bother me and it's fine, but you don't know what's going on behind the scenes with somebody. And you could have sent this to a content creator that was going through something, and this could be the thing that tips them over into another situation. Just be mindful of that. And this person came back and was like, oh my God, never knew that you read these comments. Didn't think you see it. Sorry, was just busy trolling. So I messaged back and was like, well, maybe try not trolling, maybe just be a better person. And she messaged back saying, thoughts, and that was it. I was like, okay. And I think it was a good example of someone that actually, I think, probably had their own reasons for saying that, for doing that, and whatever. Yeah. But actually, when it was pointed out, it was like, oh, it was just busy trolling. Can we not be busy trolling? Could we not be busy doing something else? But that was a good example of something that just, I don't think people think because it's online, it doesn't count. Yeah. But I do know that these things, it can tip over. I mean, for me, I guess the tips for like being resilient is YouTube has a section where they filter out inappropriate words. They'll filter out inappropriate content, and you can see it if you go onto like your messages, and it's like you can find these by clicking a button, and this thing pops up and says some of these comments might have inappropriate words. Do you want to proceed? I might. Like, I don't know, the intrigue about it. I always click yes, and then you read it. It's just like endless hate. Let me tell you, don't click that button. You don't want to know. Nobody needs, you don't need to know. And I was always clicking that button, just seeing what don't click the button. No. But also, I think having, taking a little bit of time and working out. One thing that works well for me is on those days where I'm feeling really motivated, really inspired, really like positive about things, I'll blast out a load of content, and that then gives me a bit of grace period if I'm having a day where I'm feeling a bit meh, or maybe I'm not. And I think one of the hardest things to do is you have to be enthusiastic when you're filming. There is no point being less than enthusiastic because people don't watch videos where people are like monotone and not interested. So allow yourself those days off where you're feeling a little bit like that or something, that would be my top tip. I always think being ahead, I've learned like be ahead of your filming. So if you do have those periods where you're feeling a bit, you don't feel like you have to. And also I would just say your community's still there. If you miss a week uploading because you don't feel well or your mental health's not great or whatever, something else is going on in your life, your community's still there a week later when you return. And I think it took me a long time to realize that that's the case. And I wish I'd realized that earlier.
Yeah, definitely. I don't press the button. I don't look in that folder. I don't read those. No.
The folder of hate. Don't enter it.
No, I haven't looked in it for years. And I feel infinitely better because I don't.
Yeah.
No, I think you make some good points that YouTube actually does have some really good tools on the creator end of things that help you. I think that with the other social platforms like Instagram and TikTok, I think that YouTube still leads the way in creator support. I know a lot of people would disagree, but I do still think that they're the best. For me, I think definitely I had like a journey with the comments. I think when I first began, they really bothered me, the negative ones.
Yeah.
And I take a similar approach to you. If it's constructive criticism, I leave it up. If somebody's like, hey, you could have done this better, you could have said this quicker or whatever, cool. I have you are absolutely within your right to say that. And even if I'm like, it might actually be helpful for me to hear it. So I let those go. But if, like you said, if it's just downright hate, I hate your face. I had somebody was like left a million comments about my eyebrows, like on like multiple videos, just about how my eyebrows were real messy or something. And they were just like really obsessed about my eyebrows. And I was like, you're a very strange person. Please go touch some grass because this doesn't affect you at all. It's not even what my video's about.
It's so weird how particularly on shorts videos, what really gets me on shorts videos is leave a hate comment on a short video. Like it took you longer to leave that hate comment than it did to watch the video. Scroll. Like if you don't like it, look, there's plenty of content I don't like on YouTube. Scroll past, move on. Like it's not worth my time to leave a negative comment. And I would also say, like, the funny thing about it is, of course, YouTube prizes engagement. So the more engagement you have on a video, the better it does.
Exactly.
So leaving that hate comment, it's helping my engagement. So like
Thank
in a weird
you.
way, you're like, keep going, keep going.
Yeah.
Like, I just wish, I don't know. I think my advice to people that in that, and we've all had, I think people would be lying if they said they'd never had that moment where you have that bad day and you feel a little bit off and you're on your keyboard and you're tapping away and it might send an email that's not toned the way you normally would. You might send a comment. We've all had it.
Yeah.
But I do always just say to people, like, just think about who's on the receiving end of that. And that person might be having a bad day and you're just making it worse. Is it not better to just delete that comment and just move on with your life? I don't know. That would be mine. And it has definitely given me an appreciation for, like, you know, you're really annoyed because I had something delivered for a retailer and it had a rip like under the arm. And I was like, oh, this is really, I needed this. I wanted to wear this. This is really annoying. So I had to ring up to say, I need my money back, or can you send me another? And I was in that really stressed phase. And when that person answered the phone, I was like, yeah, this isn't, they don't want it. They don't need to hear it. And actually, do you know what? Just take it down a notch. Say, actually, I'm a bit annoyed by this. However, can we just fix it? And then we move on with our lives. And I think it's given me appreciation for, like, it goes beyond just YouTube. Like, people are just going about their day, trying to live a life. They don't need, they don't need that. So that would be my advice. I would say, like, think before you click.
Yeah, definitely the one thing that I feel like should be said more often is, like, I'm a human being. So that means that I mispronounce things. It means I get some things wrong sometimes. It means that, like, I make typos. It means all kinds of things, right? Because I'm a human being just like you. And I know that you're not perfect. I know that we're all trying our best on any given day. And sometimes the best is not as good as it was the other day, right? But we're all trying our best. And having a little bit of empathy. And I think that that is true of the person who's writing the comment. Know that the receiving end is a human being who is just like you. How would you feel receiving that comment, right? But also, I read the comments with empathy. Maybe I'm too empathetic. I'll read the mean comments. I'll be like, well, that person's just having a really bad day. Like, I can't take that personally. And that's definitely something that I think is a healthy way to cope with when you're getting constant. I mean, I would even say when you're getting constant love, when you're getting constant praise, but also when you're getting constant, like, I don't like you. It's just everybody's coming from their own little spaces. Everybody's a human being. But when you're behind the keyboard, when you're not the one on camera, I do think that there is a certain amount of bravery, I think, that allows people to say things that they normally would not say if they were standing face to face with you. So I guess that would be the takeaway for anybody watching or listening, is just remember that even if they have millions of followers, these people are human beings, and they're going to see that, and they're going to be affected in a human way by what you said. Totally. So, definitely pay it forward and try to be a little bit kinder, because it's always going to come back to you. I truly believe that.
Absolutely. 100% it comes back, and take it out of the personal. This is what I think what annoys me. Like, you can say to someone, actually, I don't like speed of the video, or maybe could you hold up the product clearly, or all that is constructive criticism that you might not want to hear in that moment, but actually it's coming from a place of constructive and fine. Being personal, I don't like your brows. Me, it's always, I don't like your accent. I can't do anything about that. Or that someone said the other day, that color doesn't suit you. Why do you care what I'm wearing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not something like, why does that matter? It doesn't. And I'd say, like, if it's a personal remark, leave it at the door. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? This is unnecessary. Constructive feedback, absolutely fine. Like I said, I know we have the same philosophy of, I don't delete a comment unless it's offensive. I just think, like, you have it up there, but just, we'd all be happier if we weren't been so keyboard warrior.
And I think too, for me personally, just like from like managing mental health and burnout and all of that too, I think for For me, it took me a really long time to be able to take weekends off. That was always something I worked straight through for years and years and years and years. And it's something that I had done prior to YouTube too. I'd worked multiple jobs. There was not a lot of time off. I've always had that strong work ethic, but that is definitely something that leads to burnout, that leads to a lot of stress and just, it was a lesson that I learned last year where I was like, I just have to give myself regular breaks. I have to be able to honor, you know what I mean? Like that rest mode. And so I really went on that journey to figure out how to make that happen, because it's not as easy as it sounds when you're doing everything yourself. But I finally got to a good place where I can actually do that. And my ability to manage the amount of work that I do during the work week has significantly, improved positively, because I am giving myself that time and I'm not treating myself like a work robot. Again, human being, right? And so that was one thing. Yeah. And the other thing I think that you touched on for yourself, which is if you miss a week, it's fine. For myself, it was like, I don't have to show up in every place, everywhere, all at once. I don't have to be on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and a blog and Just be where you feel comfortable the most, and where you feel good. And if you want to, be sporadic on social, you can be sporadic. It's like sometimes you just have to give yourself permission to do what feels good for you. And something else you mentioned, not compare yourself to what other people are doing. Once you allow that, you'll figure it out.
You guys go. Yeah, and it's I think to sort of end this bit, so on the positive, one thing I would always say to content creators that I'll learn is if you build a following, and people are generally really kind, for all the keyboard warriors, for all of those people are watching one of your videos. They've come across one video, they've had the little moment, and then they've gone. The people that are with you all the time actually really care, and we're in a fortunate position to have that. And one thing I always say, or what I've learned is, if you are going to take a week off, it's fine. You don't have to, I'm going away in a couple of weeks' time for a few weeks. I've got some content loaded, but it might be slightly less frequent. I always just put on the community tab or on one of the socials, just a little note saying, having some family time, going away, just so people know. Because I do think one thing I've noticed is if you're away for a little time, lots of people reach out and care. And are genuinely concerned, like, oh, you upload every day and suddenly we've not got some uploads for a week. What's happening? And that comes from a place of kindness. And I always thought, originally I'm like, oh, you don't have to justify yourself. You can have a week off if you want. You can, but it's kind of nice that people care. And so I always try, when I do take that time off, just to put a little note on, if it's possible, to say, this is, because it's always nice that there's that community. And I think it's always worth remembering, because like you said, for every comment that's negative, there's a lot that are people that are enjoying it. And that's what kind of keeps me going. Yeah, definitely focusing in on the positive, because there's more times out, like it's going to be more positive than it's ever negative. And if it's more negative than it's positive, then of course, like, we have some reflection to do, but that one negative comment can skew your whole view of something. And it's just like, let's put this into perspective. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah. So let listeners know, I know you said this at the beginning, but if listeners want to connect with you, watch your videos, where can we find you on the glorious internet? You can find me at MadAboutSkin on YouTube, which sticks with me. I keep thinking I'd change that name. If I had my time over again from the start, I'd change that in. But it is what it is. We're here. We're still living. So yeah, find me at MadAboutSkin over on YouTube. Same goes over on TikTok. I'm rubbish at Instagram, so I won't give that one out, because I think I last uploaded about 3 years ago. So I won't give that one out. But you can find me at MadAboutSkin. I'd love to connect with anyone on any of those channels. So yeah, thank you. Perfect. Thank you so much. No, thanks for having me. It's been really fun. So thank you so much. If you loved this conversation, I would be so honored if you would share it with somebody else who would love it as well. Share it with your friends, your family, share it on social media. And if you have a moment, rate this wherever you're listening. On Spotify, you can rate it with stars. On YouTube, you can give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel. And if you're on Apple Podcasts and you have a moment, rate it with stars. But if you can write a few sentences too,
too. It is such a big help. You have no idea how helpful those written reviews are on Apple Podcasts. Not only does it allow new people to find and listen to the show, it actually really helps a new show like mine find new expert guests to create new content and new episodes for you. And I have a lot of great content coming up for you, but if you have a suggestion for a question you'd like me to answer or a guest you'd like me to interview, get in touch. If you're on Spotify, you can answer the Q&A. And if you're listening anywhere else, just go into the show notes. There's a link to leave me a voicemail. I might even feature your voice on the show. And if you're on YouTube, just drop your suggestions in the comments. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I cannot wait to see you in the next episode of Unpacking Beauty that comes out in 2 weeks. Talk to you then.